and then we headed through the Panama Canal to the Pacific. We had, I think there were 18 ships in our convoy that left Norfolk and headed down through the Panama Canal. And that Panama Canal was something. I don't know if you know how it works, but I didn't know. But all I know is that it had three locks at the beginning on the Atlantic side, and each lock would bring us up a step. So here, once we get up the third step, then it's lakes that we went through. And then when we get to the other side, so it must have been mountains in the middle. So when we get to the other side, then we had three locks that would lower us down to the Pacific side. And that was really amazing. In fact, going through the canal, I could almost touch the sides of the canal. We have this convoy that is going to, I believe it was Ifedi, one of the islands uh, in the Pacific. Uh, there we were going, and we heard as we're going that we might be put off on an island. So we didn't know, we didn't understand that, but we had our job to do, taking care of the planes, because I was a aircraft mechanic, and here we are steaming thousands of miles, uh, first to Hawaii, and then heading uh, west. Now we find out that uh, the big problem is at Guadalcanal. It seems that they were able to land our troops, Marines, on Guadalcanal, but then the Japanese came in tremendous force and chased our Navy away. And here we the Marines needed food and ammunition and all that stuff, that they needed so much. And here the Navy was chased away. That's because we only had the one carrier. There were 7 carriers in the Pacific. Now, 6 of them were either sunk, damaged, or in for repair. So there was only one aircraft carrier that was fighting against the whole Japanese Navy. They formed us and a couple and battleships and cruisers and destroyers, and we were a task force that was going after the Japanese Navy, and that's what we did. So first we had to get convoys into and out of Guadalcanal in order to resupply the Marines that were there and take the ones off that were sick or damaged or whatever, and put new Marines in with more food and ammunition and everything they needed to fight the Japanese on the island. And the Japanese were really on that island, thousands of them. So here we did, and they had us between the Shenango and the Swanee. We would take turns taking convoys in. Now, our planes would fly not only over us, but over the convoy, and we would have planes scouting the whole area to make sure that there is no enemy planes around. And of course, the destroyers would make sure that there were no submarines around. So now we're getting all kinds of supplies into and out of Guadalcanal. What happened was once we would bring them in and they would start to unload everything, we would wait around and make sure that the whole island was protected and the convoy was protected and our carrier was protected. And so we stayed there until they were all unloaded, and now they're coming out. And we have to make sure that they get out and back to this island safe and sound. And that's what we did. So uh, now the next trip would be done by the Swanee, and they would do the same thing, bring more troop ships in with supplies and everything else needed. And uh, now the Swanee got hit. Uh, the uh, the the Jap planes dropped a bomb on the Swanee. So now we had to go back on when we were back at Ifedi. They put us ashore at the Army base or Marine base. I don't know where it was. Uh, but now we had to go back on the Shenango in order for us to go and relieve the Swanee and take the convoy into Guadalcanal, and that's what we did. And meanwhile, the Swanee came back to be repaired. We were ordered to go back to the West Coast for maintenance, repair, and whatever has to be done to the ship. We first unloaded all the aircraft parts we had and all the ammunition we had, and then there was two tankers. One came and took all the aviation fuel we had. Another one took the fuel we had, but there was enough for us to make it back to the States. And that's where we headed. We went back to the States, to San Diego, and they transferred. First of all, the whole squadron, 38, was transferred off the ship, and that's what I was on. And sure enough, they got new men coming on board, and a new squadron coming on board, and they had to be trained, and so they would train them out, takeoffs and landings, and everybody for what the job there was. But there was one thing I didn't tell you, or I don't remember if I told you that the ship wanted me to be a plane director, and the squadron wanted me as their mechanic, and they were fighting about it. And finally, they came up with a solution that I would be a mechanic, except during flight quarters. Then I would be on the flight deck as a plane director. First, we came to Hawaii, and the Hawaiian people were so excited. Then they were dancing, and the music was playing, and the hula girls were dancing, and everybody was hello and how are you and welcome back and all that stuff. And it was such a wonderful welcome that it really made you feel that you accomplished something. Now, when we get back to the States, there's one man standing on the dock in order to get, when we throw the rope so our hawsers open to secure the ship, he's there to put it and secure it. And that's all that was back in the States. They gave me 30 days leave, and then I was to go to Seattle for a new carrier. So now there's this, they want to take somebody and put them in charge of the plane directors on the flight deck. So it was between me and this bosun's mate. And he wanted it, and he wanted it really bad. uh, but they picked me, and because we were both first class, I thought. Uh, so now I'm I'm in charge of the flight deck, and I said, "Oh, I'm in charge. Good." So I didn't like the way they catapulted their planes. Um, I changed it. Oh, from Seattle, we took and went through the Panama Canal to the Atlantic Ocean and up to um, Rhode Island, um, and where we took on a squadron and the Admiral, which made us the, I forget what they call us. Flagship. The flagship. Thank you, Stephen. Uh, uh, so we were the flagship. So now uh, we've gone over for this invasion of southern France, and uh, we're off the coast. And the well, first of all, we went all around and we stopped at um, Alexandria, Egypt, uh, which was a neutral port, which means that the enemy could come in there and we could come in there. Now, in leaving, if one leaves, the other one can't leave for so many hours so that the other one gets away, and then we could leave. Now, it had never been bombed until we got there, and that's when they bombed it. But it didn't hurt us. Oh, we're off the coast of southern France, and the admiral calls down from the bridge, "Hey Miller, we're going to get all these planes off in 15 minutes." And I'm a stupid kid, and I say, "What's the extra 5 minutes for?" And he laughed so hard, I thought he'd fall off the bridge. I didn't say, "Sir," he's the admiral. I didn't, I supposed to show respect. He's above the skipper of the ship, Anyhow, so what happened was that day we broke the fleet record of catapulting because I changed the method of what took the longest was getting that plane onto the correct position on the catapult, and I eliminated all the problems that we had doing it the Navy way, and here I did it my way, and it worked out beautifully. And we not only broke the fleet record, and normally when you break a record, it's by a few seconds, but this was a big difference in the record we broke, and then for the whole fleet, that not just the little aircraft carriers, but the big ones as well. So it was amazing, and the admiral was so proud, and he said that he was so impressed with the way I handled the plane directors and the planes on the flight deck, that it was like a what did he say? Like one of the finest orchestra at playing a symphony. Everything was in the right place at the right time, doing the right thing. And he says, and it made the scheduling of the flights and how they protected the landings at the troops on the and the planes that we shot down, and everything worked so perfectly. And I think that's why I received a medal. Um, it was a Navy commendation that I received. Now, all the other commendations I received was for the whole ship, and so. But and they would end up being, if it was for the whole ship, it was only for a ribbon. This admiral was originally, the first invasion we made was in French North Africa. He was the captain of the Ranger, and he got promoted to admiral. So he knew what he was doing, and he was good, and he had everybody's respect, and he was amazing. And so what happened was, after we finished with this invasion, and we got recommendations from the Army, the Navy, and everybody else, and it was just amazing that the job we did. So now we have to go to the Pacific. Now that we finished in the Mediterranean, so we headed through the Panama Canal to the Pacific, and that's where we headed for. Let's see. Oh, it was the Philippines. We were at we did the Philippines and Lingayen Gulf and a couple others there in the Philippines, and then we headed. Then after that, our next invasion was Iwo Jima, which we had the same problems with the kamikazes coming in and sinking all our ships and damaging our ships and killing us, so many of our men, our sailors. And then, of course, after that was Okinawa, and the same thing was at Okinawa, and each one of these was worse than the one before. And Okinawa was the same thing. And in both Iwo Jima and Okinawa, they not only had these suicide planes, but they had these suicide boats, and they had one-man suicide submarines. There was so much going on, and we weren't allowed to write home about any of the bad stuff. We could always write home and talk about the good stuff, and that's how it was. So one of the battles I was in was helping cover the Army invading. What did I say? Oh, Bataan. Yeah, it was. There were mountains there, and they didn't expect anybody to come in. So we covered the landing there, and we took care of destroying any Japanese troop concentrations or the convoys or whatever. Anything we saw that was Japanese, we bombed, and we had a new thing. We had what were they, rockets? Were they called, or I don't know. But I will try and dig up whatever I have on the Philippines, and I'll send it to you. As we were coming, we heard that they had 100 suicide planes waiting for us. But it wasn't 100. It was 1,000. Yeah. So our information was not correct. And it also told the date that it started. Now, the date they have is not when we know it started, because while we were on our way there, I could see, it was a big convoy coming to the Philippines. And I could see a carrier up there on, I don't know how many miles away it was from us. It was on the horizon. So it was, we weren't all bunched together. We were all spread out. So, if they attacked us, they wouldn't get us all at one time. So, and and we saw their squadron coming back from a mission, and but there was one plane that was back behind the squadron. So we radioed over to that carrier, and we said, we told them the story how we can see their planes returning, but there's a one plane back there that does not have IFF. Now, all our planes that are ours gave out a signal. It's called IFF, and we know that there are planes. And this plane didn't have it. So whoever answered our call, whether it was the radio man or an officer, and said, oh, it must be one of ours and his IFF isn't working. A few minutes later, they reported unidentified object just went through our flight deck, through our hangar deck, into our mess hall, and exploded. And it killed so many people. And that's what it was. That was a kamikaze.
You remember Iwo Jima and Okinawa?
Yes, I remember that they were worse than it was at the Philippines. The kamikazes that were, we shot down so many of them, and our planes shot down so many of them. But some of them flew right through all of this in order to get to us. There's one story I'll tell you that I remember very vividly, and that at Okinawa, um, we had to be replenished during the invasion. That we were running out of bombs and ammunition and stuff. So we had to go back and to this island and get replenished because the fuel and everything else that was there would replenish us. So we got everything was being replenished, and I'm standing on the flight deck because that's where I belong, even though there's no flying going on, and a plane is actually there were a couple of planes that were coming straight at us, and all of them were shot down except this one plane. It comes straight at me on the flight deck, and I'm standing there, and there's nothing I can do. I know he's coming straight at me. I don't know whether he's alive or dead, or whether he's just the momentum of the plane is going. And I take this. I had a pocket, one of those small books in my pocket that I took out and I wrote in what was happening. This is it. I could even see the pilot in the plane, and I knew I was going to die, and I put it back in my pocket. And at the last instant, I don't know whether the guy was alive or dead, but his right wing just dropped a little, and he just barely missed us and went into the ship next to us, and that thing blew sky high. Now, since then, I've had a lot of time to think. I don't know whether he saw me on the flight deck and figured, I'm not killing people. I just have to sink ships. Or he was dead and the momentum of the plane just kept going in that direction. I have no idea, but that I remember.
Now, what were the suicide subs and tug patrol boats like?
Oh, their submarines were one-man submarines. Only one man would fit in it. I don't know how it was propelled, whether a battery made the propellers go or what it was. But what they would do is they would come and just crash into our ship because the nose was loaded so that when the nose hit the ship, it would explode and put a hole in the bottom. So that was the submarine. But they also had swimmers that would take this, and they had magnetic bombs that they would attached to the bottoms of the ship to explode. They also had uh, motorboats that were loaded with dynamite, to blow up, and they were remote controlled, uh, and would crash into the ships. Uh, there were so many things that they did. They were trying to kill as many people as they did, uh, so that they couldn't invade Japan. I recall that even the Swanee that we were on for the invasion. Remember, I told you they got hit at Guadalcanal. They were hit again in the I think it was Okinawa. Yeah, uh, just about every ship, and they wanted mostly to get the carriers, because the planes flying off the carriers were in danger to them. We were very lucky, and I can't believe I came home alive. We were ordered back to the States while the war was still going on, for repair and replenish. And while we were back in the States, uh, and they were putting a new squadron on, Japan surrendered. The atomic bomb had dropped while we were back in San Diego. And, that's when we learned about it. So what happened was that as soon as we learned that the war was over, uh, the carrier took off. They were ordered to go to the Philippines, uh, and on the way to the Philippines, they stopped at Hawaii first, and that's when I got transferred. Because they don't need me anymore, so they transferred me to Hawaii, and I was transferred to a the Colores, which is an aviation engine repair ship, and that's all they do is repair airplane engines, and that was headed uh, to the East Coast. So, but the Tulagi continued on to the Philippines, to your home.